I was gonna give dogs that shout out too, but Kate beat me to it. So awesome. Well, I'm excited. I definitely feel inspired after Kate's opening comments too. So thanks for that, Mom. Appreciate it. Try to figure out technology here. Got a very simple PowerPoint for you all to look at while I talk. I think there's a handout for this, right, Kate?
I do have one up there if you want to use it.
Cool. Yeah, might as well. Whoop. There we go. All right. I think it is in the color. Oh, there's no. Oh, here it is. Can I get Charles' help? I set it down. Thank you. Alrighty, so I have about 30 minutes. I'm going to attempt to summarize this book for you in that time. Look at it. It's a big one. So I read this thing while I was in college, actually, which was definitely an undertaking around all the other things that I was doing in college. But I made it, and it was actually cool because I know what the 7 habits are, and I definitely have used them, and I certainly haven't mastered them, but having the opportunity to give this message kind of allowed me to relook at some of these things and dig into them again. And so I'm excited to show you guys what these habits are. And I'm really going to focus on 3 main ones, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But raise your hand if you've heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People before, coming here today, or you've read it. Has anyone read the book? Matthew, you read it? Awesome. Dogs, you read it? Or didn't finish it, but you started? Nice. It is a big one, so it's very long, it's pretty dense, but it's super, the content of it is very great. So I'm going to, like I said, attempt to give you guys the gist here in just about 30 minutes. So it's written by Stephen R. Covey, and this book was kind of like the foundation for personal growth books too, back in its time. I was talking to Jen, David's girlfriend, who's not even in Leadership Academy, but she's just here chilling out. And she was like, yeah, I ordered it, and this book is 25, 30, maybe 40 years old at this point, and it's still on Amazon's top recommendations of books and on all the top charts on Amazon. So it's definitely lasted the test of time too, which is really cool. And this book centers around the idea that we have full control over our habits, and that our habits are going to dictate a lot of the things that happen to us in our daily lives. So it's a big habit forming book. And you all have probably heard us say, or someone in Vector say, when you have the right habits, so when our habits change, our lives change. And so this book is designed to help us create lasting habits, and not just create good habits, but also get out of some of the bad habits that we may have when it comes to being effective, people, and so on and so forth. So he identifies some of the bad habits and helps us create some good habits based on his research and his studies. And so the book is, it's one that doesn't just help you in leadership and in the workplace, but it helps you just in your overall life, which I think is why it's so important, and certainly one of our leadership topics here for today. So he identifies 2 different types of habits. He identifies personal habits, or he calls them private victories, all right? And then he has public victories. And I'm going to focus mostly on the private victories. So these are ones that have to do with your personal habits, your personal growth and development. The public victories are focused more on your leadership and how to lead others and things like that. We're going to start with the personal ones, of course, because it all starts with you, right? To be able to lead others and to be able to help change others' lives, you have to be willing and able to change your own. So we're going to start with these ones. And I'm going to dig a little bit more into these 3, and then we'll kind of do like a brief overview of the last 4 for you guys that have to do with leading other people and whatnot. So with that being said, let's get started with that. So the first one, and you guys have a sheet here too that says what all of them are. You can take notes on that sheet or in your notebook, whatever it is. But it's to be proactive. So when you guys hear the phrase be proactive, what do you think of? Who could tell me what you think of when you hear proactive or to be proactive? Heather? Okay, so taking initiative and personal, just doing things because it's the right thing to do, maybe, not because you have to be told to or asked to do it. Awesome. What else? Leah? Yeah, that's a hard one sometimes, isn't it? Avoiding procrastination. Absolutely cool. What else? Elijah? So going above and beyond, not just settling for the standard, right? But being willing and able to set yourself ahead of the curve, being above average, things like that. I love all of those. Anyone else want to share one more? It's Nick, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Considering things before they happen as opposed to being reactive and doing it after it happens.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue because he uses the phrase in the terms reactive versus proactive in this. So it even means thinking ahead and kind of looking at different scenarios, how to respond to those before they even happen. I think is kind of what you're saying, which I think is a perfect way to describe proactivity there. So being proactive means being an active participant in your life and accepting responsibility and taking control over your surroundings and what you're creating out of life and things like that. So it's accepting responsibility essentially for your life is what he defines as being proactive. So we mentioned the word initiative. So it means actually taking responsibility and making the changes in your life. So not just accepting, certain circumstances, not just accepting what things are for what they are, but actually being willing and able to make decisions and make changes in your life. And that's, a good habit to have. So it means focusing on what we can control. I say this in my office a lot. You guys probably heard it, but it's always better to focus on what you can control versus what you can't control, right? And the fact of the matter is that there are, so many circumstances and situations and just activities in our day-to-day lives, and a vast majority of them are actually things that we can't control, right? And so the bad habit that some people have is they focus more on what they can't control. They waste energy on all those things, and then they don't have energy to focus on what they can control. But being proactive means focusing more on what you can control and taking full responsibility for those things. Proactive people focus on things that they can actually do something about, all right? So they focus on what they can control, what they can do something about. So he defines two different types of, ways to be, or two different types of people. You can either be reactive or you could be proactive. So any guesses what being reactive means? What do you guys think about when you hear reactive? Go ahead, Nick. You said it earlier.
After the fact, like for example, like if your house gets flooded, then you buy flood insurance.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like the opposite of being prepared, right? In that example specifically, Ivy.
The first response is a reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sometimes just like your first response to things is having a reaction to things. Cool. Anyone else? Go ahead, dogs.
I could use the example of like knowing, or lunchtime comes around, like
Mm-hmm.
oh man, I wish I had lunch, or wanting to buy lunch at that time, so
Yeah.
not dealing with things until they come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so kind of being like last minute procrastinating, like Leah said. Awesome. So it's the idea of reacting to things, right? So when he writes out the word responsibility in the book, he actually writes it as response and then a dash and then ability, right? So being proactive is having the ability to respond and not react. There's a difference there, right? He mentions how being proactive a lot of times has to do with your language, right? A lot of times how we respond to things or how we react to things is based on the story that we're telling ourselves. And the story that we're telling ourselves is sometimes much more important than what's actually happening. So being able to tell yourself the right story and responding well to things. So instead of using language like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this, right? A lot of us have probably said that to ourselves or to other people many times in our lives. Instead of saying there's nothing I can do, changing it into, well, let's look at some alternatives, right? Creating an action or creating a response. Awesome. So first habit, being proactive. Any ideas how or what actions you can take or any steps you can take to become more proactive versus reactive and start developing a good habit of being proactive? What do you guys think? Go ahead, Heather. Use a planner. Awesome. It's like planning out your day. Certainly. Cool. Matt, what were you going to say? Yeah, plan things out. That's actually going to be like related to the third habit that we talk about here in a bit. Cool. Anything else?
Just take control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just do it. Have discipline, right? Awesome. It also helps to start having more proactive language, and even if it's just not even learning all the proactive language right now, but just being aware of the language and the stories that we're telling ourselves, right? So when you're aware you have a shot, we talked about that in emotional intelligence, self-awareness. So being aware of the language that you're using and trying to change the language that you're using. Also asking yourself the question, is this in my control? Right? So when you're worried about something, when you're focused on something, when it's taking your energy, just taking a step back and saying, do I have control over this? Is this in my control? If it's not, don't waste energy on it. Focus on things that are in your control. Awesome. So once you've developed the first habit of being proactive, the second habit is to begin with the end in mind. What do you guys think that one means? Have a goal. Yeah, have a dream, have a goal, absolutely. And make your dreams crazy, right? Just like Kate was talking about. Cool. Anything else? Or what words you feel or you think when you hear begin with the end in mind? End game. Cool. Purpose. Yeah, absolutely. Dogs. Purpose. John. What'd you say? Yeah, anticipation. Cool. I think vision when I hear begin with the end in mind, right? And those are all great ways to describe this habit. Beginning with the end in mind gives you direction. Okay, it allows you to have a destination with your roadmap, right? So imagine you're trying to go somewhere, but you actually don't know where you're going, right? You're kind of not going to get anywhere, and it allows you to stay clear and focused on your destination. So sometimes, when you're driving, actually this happened to me this morning, right, Matt? I took a wrong turn, and I had this GPS right on my phone, and I had the destination in there, and even when you have a clear destination, you're not always going to be on the right path, but when you have a clear destination, if you take a wrong turn or you go off the beaten path and you are, not going somewhere, it's a lot easier to get back on track when you know what that path is and you know where that destination is going to lead you, right? And so having that in your mind, it also just helps you stay more productive because when you don't know where you're going or what you're supposed to be doing, it becomes really easy to be like busy, right? With like the busy work, the unproductive things. And you can do stuff for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and actually not get anything done. Can anyone relate to that? It feels like you like did stuff all day. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I was so busy today. And then you actually think about it and you're like, well, I didn't get any of my homework done. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't work on that project. I didn't even like call my mom like I said I was going to. And you're like, what did I actually do today, right? And so when you have that clear destination and you begin with the end in mind, it allows you to be productive versus just busy, all right? Cool. It means living out your personal mission statement or your personal mission, right? So having a personal mission and living that out, making everything you do in the purpose of accomplishing that. So any ideas, actions, steps you can take to start beginning with the end in mind? What do you guys think? Sharon, go for it.
I think I saw like a football life on Adam Smith. He wrote down his goals
Mm-hmm.
on his like bathroom mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and every time he went in there to get ready in the morning, he'd see those goals
Mm-hmm.
and have those in mind the whole day.
Yeah, so having goals and like looking at them every day. And it's hard to, if you have them hidden away, it's hard to look at them every day, but a place like your bathroom mirror, right, you're going to be in front of that thing every day, if not multiple times a day. So looking at your goals every single day. I remember, I think it was this past Olympics. I don't remember that one or the one before the Summer Olympics. There was one of the American swimmers, and he said when he was like a little kid, they showed this story how he like wrote out on a piece of paper his like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And his was like, I want to be in the Olympics. And he like wrote it out for himself, and he was like 6 years old. And then fast forward, years later, he was I think 18 or 19, and he was in the Olympics. So like giving yourself goals, and even if they're crazy, even if they're ones that are super far away, having them looking at them regular. Any other ideas? How to begin with the end in mind, Nick?
Having checkpoints like in between. So like example, if you
Mhm.
want to go to Spain in like October and can't even say a sentence in Spanish, that's really the problem.
Yeah. So giving yourself checkpoints, especially for more long-term goals, right? So that would even kind of be like having a goal and making a plan for it. And we talk about that so much in Vector. You guys probably could give your own talk on goals and making a plan, right? An interesting thing that he suggests as a way to begin with the end in mind, and this may sound a bit morbid, but he says visualize your own funeral, right? So imagine that you were at your funeral, but you were looking at it from the back of the room, right? And no one knew you were there, obviously. And envision what you would want people to say about you, right? Envision how many people you would want to be there, who you would want to be there, what types of things would be said about you, the legacy that you would leave, right? The overall feel of the room, and envision that. And that is, again, it's kind of morbid. That's the ultimate end. So that's really beginning with the end in mind, and making sure that everything you do and how you treat people aligns with how you want to be looked at and viewed at your own funeral. So that's an interesting exercise. He also says, create a personal statement for yourself. Identify your values and your beliefs and your ethics, the way you want to lead your life. Identify different areas in your life too, and pick 3 to 5 goals for each of them that can help you strengthen those areas of your life, right? Work, family, relationships, friendships, whatever that looks like. Well, the third one for our private victories, our personal growth and personal habits here, is put first things first. Right. Guesses as to what this one is? Prioritize, yeah. It was Sheldon, right? Awesome, cool. Prioritize. I heard another one of you. Yeah, making some or realizing something's importance. Absolutely. Having clear objectives, even you would say. So this habit is all about prioritization. Prioritizing your habits and your tasks to help you meet your goals. This one's hard because it requires a lot of discipline, right? It's easy to make a goal. It's a little bit harder to do the actions you need to actually reach said goal. It's having the willpower to do things even when we don't want to do them, right? It's easy to do things when you want to. It's harder to do things when you don't want to. But champions do the things they have to do. They do the things they don't want to do even when they don't want to do them because they know it's the right thing to do. They know it's how it's going to get them where they want to be, right? It helps us cut out things that aren't productive in our lives and helps us make room for things that are going to be productive in our lives and help us actually get to where we want to be, right? It also means acting on your values and your plans rather than acting based on things that are right in front of you, like impulsive desires and things like that, right? So it means acting on a plan versus an impulse. So he made this chart to help people prioritize and identify their priorities in their life. And this is something that is, it's super easy to follow. So he identifies, he's got 2 categories, right? Urgency, and then importance. And so the quadrant 1 is activities that are urgent and important, all right? These are things that are like crises. They're very pressing problems. It's a hard deadline, right? An example as a student might be like, oh, you forgot you had a paper due and it's due tomorrow, right? You're like, oh man, I got it. This is an urgent and an important thing. It's like top of the top of the to-do list. Very deadline driven. Any guesses what kind of like a problem is if you live too much in quadrant 1? That's what this is, quadrant 1. How could that make someone feel if they're always living in quadrant 1? Stress, right? It feels like you're always putting out fires. That's kind of how it feels if you're always living in quadrant 1, is you're always putting out fires, right? It's very high stress sort of a quadrant, all right? Quadrant 2 is not urgent and important, and this is actually the most important quadrant. So I'll talk about this one a little bit in just a little bit. But the last 2, quadrant 3, urgent but not important. This is you're studying, you get a text message. It's an urgent thing. It's on your screen, right? But it's not important. It's getting a random call. It's like checking an email that just came through. It's dealing with an interruption that's urgent in front of you, but it's not actually important. And then the 4th quadrant, not urgent, not important. These are our completely unproductive things, right? This is Netflix. This is playing video games. This is busy work, time wasters, right? It's okay to like have habits and stuff like that, but you want to make sure there's a plan for those things and it's not something that's taking up your productive time. So quadrant 2 is where the most successful and the most effective people live. And this quadrant requires long-range planning, right? This is, again, making that plan and not just acting based on your impulses. Preparation. It has preventative maintenance. This also is where you think about relationship building, personal growth. Obviously, you can plan in some leisure, like I just mentioned. This is quadrant 2. And that's where you want to. That's where you want to live. Okay. So urgency are the things that are present, and they kind of poke at us, right? It's like right here in front of us right now. Just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important. Importance has to deal with things that are going to drive results and drive production. All right, you want to spend your time on that stuff as much as possible. Cool. What do you guys think you can do to live more in quadrant 2 and to be productive and have priority over your tasks and things like that? Plan. Okay, Heather. Mhm. Mhm. Right. Absolutely. So a focus, how it doesn't even have to be 5 or 6. Some days it's just a focus 3, right? But it's like, okay, I know I've got a gazillion things to do, but if I just get these ones done, like this is all I accomplish for the day, my day is that's still a productive day, right? So some of you guys may be able to relate to this, but I feel like every time I check one thing off my to-do list, 2 more things get added onto it, right? I make to-do lists, and just because it's kind of like my way of writing down all the stuff I have to do so I don't forget it. If I focused on having to get all that stuff done every single day, right, that would be very overwhelming. So I pick out like my focus 3 or my focus 5, and I focus on getting those things done. I focus on them first, and then after that I can kind of start working on some other stuff, but being able to prioritize. Another one is just identifying what your quadrant 2 activities are, right? So it's hard to live in quadrant 2 if you don't know what those activities for you specifically are. Any other ideas on how to put first things first? Habits you can get into? Cool. Simple one is don't just make to-do lists, but actually like prioritize those to-do lists. So I was always taught when you make a to-do list, number 1 are the things that are like, they need to get done. They're very important. 2 is like, okay, not super urgent right now, could push it off a day or 2, right? And 3 are the things that are like, if I don't do this, like I'll probably be fine, right? Just having a prioritization system that makes sense for you. He also writes an idea is to create an activity log, all right? And like focus or pay attention to how much time you spend doing certain things every day, right? Pay attention to how much time you spend on social media every day. Pay attention to how much you watch Netflix every single day. How much time do you spend doing homework? Do you go to the gym every day, right? And actually like looking at those things, and you'd be amazed how much time you're actually spending on time wasters versus those productive things. And the funny thing is that if you actually prioritize and you're productive with the things you need to be productive with, you still have time to do all those other things. You just kind of feel less stressed about everything when you prioritize like that. All right, so I wanted to focus mostly on those 3 because I think they're the most important ones, right? Because we've got to start with ourselves. And, when you start with yourselves and you become a better person, that's going to help you lead others. So that transitions into our the second set of 3 habits, which are your public victories. And these are going to allow you to now effectively manage other people. So how to become a strong leader, teaching other people what you've learned. And applying these things to your leadership style, which is cool. So the first one is think win-win, all right? So many times when there's a situation or 2 people are discussing something or whatever, people view situations as there's 2 sides, right? You win or you lose. But Stephen Covey says you should look for win-win things, right? How does everybody win in this scenario? Don't just look at the best case scenario where one person wins and then someone, doesn't lose that much. It's like, no, that's not a good outcome. Actually thinking win-win. When one side loses too much, there's resentment and unhappiness. So when people think win-win, this creates interdependent relationships, which is really important. So whether it's business to business, a leader in a business to someone that they're leading, whatever that is. It's also having the abundance mentality versus the scarcity mentality. You guys have heard that one before. So the abundance is there's enough for everybody. We can all have what we want versus give and take, right? Versus if I get this, the other person doesn't. Right? So thinking win-win. The next one is seek first to understand, not to be understood. This is one of my favorite ones. In the leadership academies that I was running on Monday, we actually had a good conversation about this because it also has to do with emotional intelligence. What does that mean, though? Seek first to understand, not to be understood. Listen, right? And not just like look like you're listening, right? But like actually listening. So Sebastian who's playing at a football game this weekend. He said, and he's in a program in leadership for his school, and they call it active listening, right? So you're actively listening. You're not just like staring at the person going, mm-hmm, yeah, but you're actually processing what they're saying so that you fully understand the situation, right? So oftentimes what we do is we listen to form a response, right? Can any of you guys relate to that? Like as you're listening to someone, raise your hand. You're like listening, and you're already thinking of what you're going to say before they're even done talking. Has anyone done that before? It's okay. Like it's fine. We all probably have. And so the thing about that is you're not fully understanding the person's perspective. You're not fully putting yourself in their shoes and understanding the full situation, right? Imagine if you went to the doctor and you were like, okay, here are my symptoms, and you said 2 out of the 5 of them, right? And after the 2, the doctor was like, no, I already know what it is, and then gives you a diagnosis, but they didn't fully listen. They don't know all of the symptoms, right? So this is going to allow you to see their perspective, fully dive in, and not you don't want to fill in the blanks while you're listening, right? You just want to listen, understand what they're saying, and even if you need to take a few minutes or a few seconds to form a response, that's much better than blurting it out when you don't know the full picture, right? The thing about listening is it's equally, if not more important about communication than talking is, right? And listening skills are something that also need to be constantly worked on and constantly improved. It requires a certain selflessness, right? So not making a conversation about you, but really making it about the other person. And making sure you understand what the problem is so you can help solve it. So seeking first to understand, not to be understood. The 6th one is synergize, all right? This is the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? When an organization has synergy, all right, it's the idea that 1 plus 1 is 3 or more, right? So 1 plus 1 doesn't just equal 2. 2 people or multiple people coming together is greater than just the sum of what they are. This is focusing on people's strengths and allowing those strengths to complement each other, right? So especially in our offices, we always talk about surrounding ourselves with people who complement the strengths and our characteristics that we already have so we can become greater as a whole, right? This helps you focus on what people can individually offer, and it helps create powerful organizations. When an organization has synergy, it catalyzes, unifies, and unleashes the greatest powers within people. Right? And that doesn't just have to do with business too, right? The idea is, in the future you get married, the goal is that, the 2 people who are married, because of that, they bring out each other's strengths, and then they're way better than they are just individually, right? So creating synergy in a marriage or in a relationship, whatever that is. Those are the 3 habits for public victories, right? For leading others, those leadership habits. The 7th one is kind of going to help bring it all together. This is an easy one, which is sharpen the saw. What do you guys think that means? Focus, practice, cool. He uses the word renewal, right? Making sure that that you keep you as the most important person, right? So this means continuing to grow, continuing to add to the habits you've already created. And it just means even taking a step back and having time for ourselves, right? Not getting caught up in the day-to-day and the go, but actually taking a step back, relaxing, and making sure we're always at our best, because that's going to allow you to make those other 6 habits even stronger. So he gives 4 categories for renewal. All right. The first one is physical. So exercise, nutrition, sleep management, stress management, things like that. The second one is mental. Right, so that's keeping your brain sharp, reading, writing, visualizing, planning. There's a spiritual, so value clarification, commitment, study, meditation. And then there's social renewal, so service, empathy, intrinsic security, socializing, right, hanging out with people. So sharpening the saw means continually growing, having that growth mentality, and making yourself the number one priority. So obviously, hard to get all of that into 30 minutes, but I hope you guys got like the gist of each of the 7 habits. Of course, the important ones to start off with are your personal ones, right? The first 3, that's why I spent a little bit more time on those. But as you excel at those 3, then you can start working on the other 4, which is pretty cool. So hopefully that helps you guys become more effective humans. And I'm excited for the rest of our Leadership Academy talks. I think next is lunch. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Can we get Courtney a round of applause?
You got it. And I know that for some of the 7 habits, you guys, Court kind of gave you guys an overview, like the Cliff Notes, if you will, version of that stuff. But certainly if you hear some of the stuff we're talking about and you're interested, some of these are available for pretty cheap on like things like audio that you can download. Some are even free. You could download online onto iPads and all that sort of stuff. These make good things for some of your family members don't know what to get you for holidays. I always like to ask for suits if you're a young professional. That's a really good one. For mom and dad to get you like professional clothes, suits, dress clothes, all that sort of stuff. Especially if you're going to be a sales manager, assistant manager, branch manager, district manager next year, whatever it might be. And some list of books for like grandparents or aunts and uncles that want to get you something. Getting some cool leadership books that you hear something and you're like, oh, that's kind of neat. I'd be excited to dig a little deeper on that one. That's one. I know we've been working on a few so far. So with that being said, we are going to take a lunch break. I have lunch for you guys provided. So we've got some bottled waters if you need it. We've got sub sandwiches, a variety of different ones. There's some cookie trays, chips. So I do ask that you, on like the first round, maybe take like 1 to start and don't do the 2-plate thing like quite yet. And then if there's leftovers, obviously go back for more. You're welcome to whatever's there. So let's make sure everyone gets through at least 1 round first. As I said, restroom. The codes are on the back corner there if you need to use it. If you need anything, the district managers, myself, we're around. Answer any questions, help out if we need to. We'll reconvene at 1:15. So feel free to use it. If you want to walk outside, get fresh air, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. And then we'll get started back here shortly. Alexa, play. How we doing so far, Kirsten? Doing okay? Good. Ivy, you good? Yeah, good. Good.
Can I set it up? Everything ready?